This time around on Author's Corner with me, Kate Delaney, here on America Tonight, a conversation with Thomas Fitzhugh Sheets. His book, On That Day, a Trilogy. Boy, we had a great off-air conversation. He is so fascinating to me, some of the things that he's done, including the fact that in Virginia, he has a beef cattle operation. Yes, so think about that. That's always fascinated me. Thanks so much for hopping on with us, Thomas.
You're welcome. Glad to talk with you.
So first of all, before we dive into your book, tell us about your farm and how that all came about and what you do.
Well, I guess it keeps me close to the earth. My grandfather was kind of a gentleman farmer and had a farm nearby where I'm at, and I grew up around cows, and he also had horses, but some of the members of the family became horse people. I became a cow person. So this is a beautiful time of the year. The grass is real green. Some of the wildflowers are coming up. I saw some poppies this morning. The buttercups are coming up. The daisies will be later, but it's just a beautiful time of year.
Nice. All right. So, you're also passionate about your faith, and you've written a couple of different books, and this is a different one, On That Day. So tell me about the trilogy and what people can expect when they read your book.
On that day is actually 3 books. The first one, and I wrote these without realizing that it was going to become a trilogy, but each book seemed to follow the other. The first one is The Death of the Promise, which is the living in the promise of salvation had died in the Jewish culture when Jesus came. The Sadducees didn't believe in the resurrection of the dead, and the Pharisees believed that not only did they believe in the resurrection, they believed that they possessed what was promised, and at the moment they died, they went into the age to come, which we would call heaven.
And then you take it from there. So you go from there, as you said, it just one followed the other. So then where do you take us after that? Right,
into the resurrection of the promise, based on the idea that if Jesus doesn't come out of the grave, the promise dies with him. So It's all about God's promise to Abraham to that he had the power to raise the dead.
And your book, you and I talked about this off the air, part of what made you write this book, or part of what was rattling around inside you, was that this is a book that would certainly help people who have kind of lost touch with their faith, right?
I think so. There's an awful lot of people who have become disillusioned with their church experience. And they're told that if they believe that they have eternal security, and the moment they die, they go to heaven. And this basically is counterproductive for the church membership. And I became disillusioned, just like a lot of people have, with the church. And a pastor friend of mine, I was talking to him at a meeting, and we discussed my disillusionment, and he was had the same thing going on in his brain. In fact, he was so disillusioned with the church that he believed that the church was apostate. And he was part of a writer's group, and he suggested that I write a book. And I started journaling, and eventually wrote the book, The Road to Restoration. And I believe my 3 books that followed that, by the way, that wasn't very well written, but the 3 books that followed that are me relating a journey of faith, the faith of the first century church, and it is the road to being restored to paradise.
And in writing these books, how does that make you feel? That has to be a good feeling for you because of what you were finding in your own disillusionment.
Well, yes, ma'am. That is probably the biggest blessing in this, is that I feel now like I was chosen by God to do this, to try to refocus the church on not on what's past, but what's in the future. That Jesus was, is, and will come as the righteous judge, and we should see him as the righteous judge coming for an accounting of what we did with what we were given.
And so I think you're saying it there, but when people get any of your books, any of the books that you mentioned, and this book on that day, you can get it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or any place where good books are sold. What do you hope they take away from reading your book?
Well, what God developed in me is what I consider to be the most important thing that I got out of it, is I am a witness to the faith of the first century church. Their faith was in the promise that Jesus made them, that he was coming back as the righteous judge. And so their faith was in the promise more than the person, which was the faith of Abraham.
Yeah, and of course that's what you so explore in the book. So the pastor friend of yours and the writing group and people around you, what do they think of the books that you've put out? They have to feel some pride, I would think, in that.
Well, some of them do, but not all of them, because I am challenging a belief system that has come down to us from hundreds of years, and I think it's the instant gratification crowd that don't want to wait on their salvation. They want it right now. And so the instant gratification crowd, I believe, say this towards the end of my first book, which is not part of the trilogy, that they have hijacked our church.
Yeah, so it goes back to that adage that could be applied here: patience is a virtue.
Absolutely. And I believe that the same thing that's going on in the church for hundreds of years is now going on in our country. The instant gratification crowd has hijacked our country.
Boy, there's so much we could talk about there. Thomas Fitzhugh Sheets, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck with everything. And again, you can get any of the books on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.